Welcome back. Today we're going to satisfy our sweet tooth with some vegan glazed donuts, which just so happen to taste just like the donuts from a certain donut shop that's not vegan. These are the Chewy yeast donuts that are a little unhealthy, but also super delicious. This recipe is a little bit more complicated than most of my recipes, so if you want to follow along with the recipe on my website, the link is below. Before we get started, I want to mention that you're gonna want to start these donuts the night before you want to eat them because we need to proof the dough in the refrigerator overnight. But honestly, it's kind of perfect because who really wants to wake up at 5 a.m. to make donuts anyway? Not me. Also, you know how the donut shop has the little light in the window to let you know when the donuts are fresh because they taste best when they're fresh? Same thing with these donuts. So this recipe is going to make 12 donuts and 12 donut holes. So you might want to make it when you have plenty of people around to make sure everything gets eaten quickly. Whatever you don't eat right away, I recommend freezing it in freezer bags, and then you can take it out about an hour to 2 hours before you're ready to eat it. All right, now let's get started on the dough. So I have my stand mixer with the paddle attachment here, and I'm just gonna add 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour, 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar, 1 packet of instant dry yeast, and 1 teaspoon of salt, and mix it up. You want to make sure that you're using instant dry yeast here that does not need to be heated to be activated. I have found some yeast that are labeled instant yeast, but they do need heat. So just make sure that the one that you're using does not require heat. If you can't get instant dry yeast, check the recipe on my website because I do have some modifications for you in the blog post. Now in a separate bowl, I'm going to mix up the wet ingredients. 1/2 cup of non-dairy milk, 6 tablespoons of melted vegan butter, 3 tablespoons of applesauce, and 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. I'm generally hesitant about using applesauce as an egg replacer in most recipes because of the flavor, but I tried applesauce, I tried aquafaba, and I tried no egg replacer at all when I was testing this recipe, and I was surprised that the applesauce gave me the best texture and flavor. So I'm just adding these wet ingredients to the dry ingredients, and I'm mixing it on a low speed until I get a rough ball of dough. Then I'm going to switch out the paddle attachment for the dough hook and mix it on medium speed until it is smooth, which should take about 7 to 8 minutes. My dough is ready now, so I'm going to take a large bowl and spray it with some oil, and then I will put the dough in the bowl and just cover that with plastic wrap, let it rest for about 30 minutes. Then I'm going to take the plastic wrap and spray that with some oil, and I'm going to put the plastic wrap directly on top of the dough. And then all of that will just go in the refrigerator overnight to proof. And I'll see you back here in the morning. All right, well, it is morning now, so the first thing I am going to do is take my dough out of the refrigerator and let it rest someplace warm until it has doubled in size, which should take about an hour. I'm also going to prepare some parchment paper squares. So I'm cutting them to about 4 inches, and then I'm going to place them on 2 baking trays. So in total, I'm going to need about 15 squares to hold all the donuts and the donut holes. Once my dough has risen, I'm going to roll it out so it's about 1/3 of an inch thick, and then I'm going to cut it into donuts and donut holes. They do have donut cutters you can buy for this, but I'm just using a large glass that's about 3.5 inches in diameter, and I'm also using the wide end of a piping tip to cut out the middles. You want to make sure that you dust the edges of your cutter, whatever you're using, in flour so that it doesn't stick to the dough. And as I cut the donuts and the holes, I'm just going to place them on those parchment paper squares that I already prepared. And I'm going to cover these up with a kitchen towel for one last rise, which will take about an hour until they are nice and puffy. Now it's time to fry the donuts. So you want to use a neutral tasting oil with a high smoke point. So for me, I'm using peanut oil. You could also use canola oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil would all work. I would not use your plain vegetable oil, which is also known as soybean oil. because it does have a taste to it, and that taste is gonna overpower the donuts. All right, so I'm gonna heat up the oil in a large saute pan over medium heat. Once the oil's hot, then I'll use a metal spatula to place the donuts in the pan along with the parchment paper squares. This is gonna allow you to transfer the donuts without having them deflate too much. Once they're in there, you can just use some tongs to pull out the parchment and you can throw it in the trash. When they're golden brown on one side, then I will turn them to the other side to finish. So the donuts should take about a minute to turn golden, and the donut holes will be a little quicker, about 30 to 45 seconds per side. And then I'll just set them on some paper towels to drain the oil. All right, now I'm gonna make the glaze. So I'm making a plain glaze here, but you could also make a chocolate frosting if you prefer and put some vegan sprinkles on top. The recipes for both the glaze and the chocolate frosting are on my website. So I'm mixing up 2 cups of powdered sugar here with a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And on the stove, I'm heating up a tablespoon of vegan butter with a 1/4 cup of unsweetened almond milk, just until the butter melts. Then I'm gonna add in a teaspoon of vanilla, and all of this is gonna get whisked into the powdered sugar until I have a smooth glaze. So then I'm gonna set up a wire rack here with a baking tray underneath just to catch any drips from the glaze. And then I'm gonna dredge the donuts through the glaze until they're coated, and then set them on the wire rack to dry. So obviously, if you can't tell, these are a lot of work, but they are so good. Thank you so much for watching. This recipe is in the bag, but I will be back soon with more. In the meantime, if you have any suggestions, anything you want to see, leave me a comment below and maybe I'll make it into a new video. See you next time.